Good morning, Swans.
So this week we're going to be talking about debate. And last week there was a debate competition called Reque, and some students from Swans took part in it. We were two teams, and with me today is Mencia.
Hi.
Nabil.
Hello.
Diego.
Hello there.
And Seve.
Hello.
Seve is the supreme leader, team captain of debate club for Swans. So Seve, can you explain a bit about how the debate competition goes, how Reque works?
Yeah, so the competition consists of a number of debates. It consists of two halves, really. One qualifying round, and second half a knockout stage. And yeah, the qualifying round consisted of 3 debates, I believe.
Yep.
And if you won those 3 debates, you would qualify to the knockout round, which consisted of a last 16, quarter-final, semi-final, and ultimately a final. Yeah, Swans, both teams from Swans, Baseball Monkeys and Team DCN, managed to get to the semi-finals, which was rather impressive, although ultimately rather disappointing that we missed out on bringing the tournament back home to Swans. Yeah, but don't worry, guys. There'll be a number of other competitions of which we'll be taking part in the upcoming months, and trust me, it's coming home.
Yeah, amazing.
It's coming.
Cool. Okay. As you can see, the team names weren't that
Formal.
Yeah, formal or intellectual. We had the baseball.
DCN was very intellectual.
Okay, what does
excuse me.
DCN stand for, Mencia?
Dinosaur chicken nuggets. But
That's very intellectual.
Seems very formal when you
So
say
yeah,
it.
dinosaur chicken nuggets and baseball monkeys. I don't think they represent our intellectual capabilities, but
Which was funny because we went into the competition, we didn't know what the other teams' names were, and suddenly we got the classifying teams, and the teams were like Latin names and Greek sayings and stuff that they're supposed to sound intellectual, and then there's just baseball monkeys and DCN, which no one knows what that stands for.
apart from us. Well, for those students who are thinking about debating, Seve, can you please tell us why debating is so important?
Yeah, so there are a number of reasons why you guys should debate, why you guys must debate. Unfortunately, we don't have a few hours, so I won't be able to explain them all, but I'll keep it simple. So basically, I would say debating is something that we should all take part in because it's something that really expands our horizons. Debating forces you it challenges your beliefs and certain preconceptions that you have. What debates does in this specific example, it forces you to consider your own beliefs, and it really challenges them because ultimately you end up having to argue against what you fundamentally believe in, and ultimately that is something that I believe we should all do because ultimately, what kind of opinion, what kind of belief is an unchallenged one? If we don't have our preconceptions, our opinions challenged, then I would question of what worth are they?
So summing up, it's just good to fight against what you believe to see the other side and just to improve your critical thinking, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say fight, but I would say that it's beneficial because it allows for your beliefs to be challenged, which is great. And as you said, critical thinking is another reason why we should all debate because if after debating for a while, what it teaches you is how to evaluate arguments and evaluate the quality of certain arguments. And ultimately, this helps improve your critical thinking ability as it teaches you to be able to discern between what you would consider as a weak argument, an invalid argument, a strong one. And ultimately, this doesn't just help you on the floor in a debate competition, but in all aspects of life, because it means that you're ultimately less vulnerable to being manipulated by people, by false logic, right? And this will not only help you in your personal relationships, in being able to persuade people of certain things, or being less vulnerable to persuasion by invalid arguments, but also and this links into what has been discussed in this podcast in the last few weeks. It also makes you much less vulnerable to fake news, to manipulation by all of the things you see on social media, because if you're critically thinking about what you see, which is what you have to do in a debate, which is what debating teaches you, you're ultimately going to be much more aware and much less likely to treat everything as fact, to see something and to just
to question what you
instinctively
see.
believe it. Yes. A third and final reason that we should all debate is because it helps you. It improves your ability to engage in public speaking, which is something that we should all do, because there will come a time in our lives where we have to give a presentation.
That's what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, exactly what I'm doing right now. Give a presentation to your colleagues, to your boss, and where you have to be able to communicate your ideas effectively. And this is what debate teaches you, and it gives you the confidence to do that. So yeah, guys, debate.
Cool. And back to the competition, we have Diego here, who, we're all part of the Baseball Monkeys, which they considered us the B team, but in the end we got as far as the A team. So.
Wow, Sam.
Okay, whatever.
Right, you gotta be careful with that.
Yes.
Well, Diego was part of the Baseball Monkeys.
Yes,
with
I was
Nabil
the
and
introduction.
And, Diego, it's your first time debating, right?
Yes, it is, and
How was that experience?
I think it was a bit stressful at the beginning, but as we progressed further into the competition, we got more confident and we prepared more.
Yeah, so what was your role in the team?
As I said, I was introduction.
And what does that consist of?
Basically, I summarize our points and introduce what our stance is on the motion.
Cool. Thank you very much, Diego. Mencia, could you explain the structure of one single debate, how that goes?
Okay, so there are two teams, proposition and opposition. The proposition will support the motion.
What's a motion?
The motion is the question you were given at the beginning of the debate, saying, for example, ours was...
should people have the right to freely end their lives?
Exactly. And you could be opposition, so you're saying, no, people shouldn't have that right. Or proposition saying, yeah, sure, they should have that right.
Nabil, about the motion, you mentioned it was about, what was the motion again?
Should people have the right to freely end their lives?
So it was a debate about euthanasia, assisted suicide, right? Do you remember any of the points for and against we used?
Well, I think that a lot of people would think that the proposition, so going for the motion, would be easier, because I think, at least generally, a lot of people think that people should have the right to freely end their lives, at least when they're in a lot of pain and in a lot of suffering. However, when you actually get to researching the opposition, so being against, for us at least, we found it a little bit easier, which was surprising, because I guess it becomes harder, even though it might be morally correct, and it would be ideally it would be a good thing to people having the right to freely end their lives in a situation where it's a fair thing. However, realistically, this is very hard to implement with regulations that can control all the extraneous variables that could come into play and make it all fair and just.
Yeah, so to also stop any abuses that can happen.
Yes. So one point that came up a lot during our debates very frequently was that family members could put pressure on the terminally ill patient to kill themselves because they are interested in, saving money because it's expensive to treat this person, but also maybe when they die, they take the heritage and they want that, so they put pressure on this person to kill themselves. And this is extremely hard to control from a government or a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah. And what other points did we have for opposition?
For well, obviously, even if there's some abuses,
even if
it's very important phrase to debate, guys. Even if there's some abuses in the regulations, or if there's cases in which rules were not followed, which is a common thing that we were looking at. We were looking at cases where these regulations were not followed. But even if these regulations aren't followed, does that mean that no one should have this right? Or should we just implement better regulations? Because that's a question that should come up more often. The fact that even if one person's doing this wrong, it's like driving a car. Because one person crashes a car and might kill themselves and other people, does that mean we should just stop everyone from driving a car? Even if it's a necessity, we see it as a necessity, but shouldn't this be also a choice for everyone else?
Yes, I mean, and that's a great point, and as Mencia said, it's one that came up in the debate. And if I was in the debate at the moment, I would respond by saying that the nature of the regulations, or at least the type of regulations that are already in place, which have been thought out by numerous experts, a lot of effort has been put into them, so they can be considered the best of what we had. I would argue that it's not that we're preventing this law from being implemented because there are abuses, because as you said, that's no different from the position on any law. What I would instead say is that the nature of these regulations, due to the fact that there are too many grey areas associated with them, can result in the regulations themselves being intrinsically hard to enforce.
Yeah, obviously.
And this is
It's
what
very
leads
hard.
to a great
Yeah.
amount of abuses.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you guys. We don't want to have a debate. But as you can see, this is what we have in Debate Club, just small debates coming out of nowhere. And I hope that's given you a little teaser into what we do in Debate Club, why it's so interesting and how much fun we have all together debating against chicken nuggets. Well, thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.
It's Radio Swans!
Oh my God, Seve, why?